because I think most people who are playing paddle competitively are probably going to be, I'm trying to think how I say this now.
Be careful.
Plus 30, let's say. Is that fair?
Yeah, wrong there. I love playing Wii tennis. And that was like another maneuver, me getting into tennis when I couldn't go to the tennis courts.
My pronunciation is going to be massively off here. So Alejandro Galan, Bea Gonzalez, and Juan Lebron. If you want authenticity and you want real cut through to an audience that actually cares, you're going to have to accept as well that opinion and real opinion is central to that. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Attention Shift. This week I've got another special guest, Ellie Walter from Dizplai. Ellie, welcome to the pod.
Hello, Ed. Thank you very much for having me. I've only been asking for the last 6 months.
Well, now this is going to be chock full of Ellie opinions, I'm hoping, so I'm going to dive straight in to the first story. Hi everyone. Just before we get into the pod, I want to talk about some research we've just done. We surveyed 1,500 games across the UK, US and Europe and found that your fans want to spend more with you. You're just not giving them enough reasons to. To find out exactly how much revenue your organisation is leaving on the table and what to do about it, head to dizplai.com/insights or scan the QR code on screen. Download the report and the guide. Both are free. So Premier Padel and Red Bull have just released a game, Court Legends. So the fastest growing sport in the world has got a problem that no one's talking about, and you're going to tell me what that is in a second. They've just launched a mobile game. They think that's the way of solving it. So, Premier Padel and Red Bull launched Red Bull Padel. It's a Court Legends, a free-to-play mobile game available worldwide via iOS and Android. Launched about 2 weeks ago, and players progress through Friend League, P2, P1, all the way up to the majors, and it mirrors the Premier Padel Tour. So you can see what they're trying to do there, and you've got real players appearing in it as game coaches. So my pronunciation is going to be massively off here. So Alejandro Galan, Bea Gonzalez, and Juan Lebron. That was all right. So the 2026 Premier Padel season covers 25 tournaments across 17 different countries, and it has stops in the UK and South Africa. And Red Bull have co-developed this game rather than a traditional sponsorship. So they are using this as an activation. They're not just trying to badge the sport, which is what we love to hear. What do you think?
I think it's a great start. I think it's a great start in terms of getting people into the sport.
Yeah.
Like I was saying to you beforehand, like I love playing Wii tennis. And that was like another maneuver, me getting into tennis when I couldn't go to the tennis courts. But really, like, is it an awareness problem that Padel is facing? Not necessarily. I can count all of my friends who go and play Padel, and it's a heck of a lot, myself included. Do we not shut up about Padel? No. If you play Padel, you talk about it a heck of a lot. But if I asked you, Ed, you're telling me you're playing Padel tomorrow, who's on the pro circuit right now, and when's the next event? Would you know?
Other than Alejandro Galan, I didn't know any of those three participants. And similarly, like, I go to the gym and I've got, people I go to the gym with, personal trainer, and they do nothing but talk about paddle. But similarly, I don't ever see that leap from participation to elite. I wouldn't know who any of the elite players are. Honestly, I didn't even know that Red Bull had partnered with Premier Padel to be part of the tour. It just wasn't on my radar.
I mean, they've been partnered with them for 2 years. Right, okay. And it was one of the biggest strategic partnerships in Premier Padel history. And I think that is an issue in itself, because if it's been going on for 2 years, and I think, it's in over 200 territories now on Red Bull TV, that is a fundamental issue, because it's like, right, you're in all these different territories. A lot of people are aware of Padel, but now how can we really get them involved in the professional circuit? And this is why I think the game is a good start, but it's not the end game. It's not going to sort the issue entirely. It will help people get there, understand the players, etc. But another thing, how are people downloading that? Where's the appointment to view to get them to the app? Is it just Padel fans on the Premier Padel Tour? Like, what is the strategy to get people to download? And that's the one that I'm most interested in. Like, where are they going to find those new fans who want to take part in the game?
Yeah, I guess as well what they're trying to do there with the game as well is just trying to get people a little bit earlier in the years and start to trying to get them go through the gears at an early age, because I think most people who are playing paddle competitively are probably going to be... I'm trying to think how I say this now.
Be careful.
Yeah. Plus 30, let's say. Is that fair? All right.
Yeah,
mid-20s onwards, Ellie.
Yeah, I think.
And they're trying to get young, because ultimately they know that it's going to be a life cycle, that they're not going to build an elite recognition of players in the space of 5 or 10 years. It's probably going to take time. And they're thinking, can we start getting them at a younger age, interested in the sport, try and get the people coming through that pipeline to become elite players. And, a game might have a resonance, a much wider scale than trying to find where you watch it. Because obviously, it's like you say, it's on the Red Bull. It's on Red Bull TV, but ultimately Red Bull TV is fast channels. You've got to go and seek it out. It's not part of any schedule. It would be hard to find to watch it. And again, similarly, I'm not sure what distribution look like when you look at social and video channels as well, like the likes of YouTube. But it sounds like you've got to go and seek out the content. So it's not necessarily front and center. Whereas a game might be easier to find, I guess.
I think it's easier to find, but I think this is where it's a good strategy to as a starting point, because you've got to think. Every single organization needs to think like a large-scale media company and have all the different touch points. So it's like, what's your distribution strategy? What's your gamification strategy? What's your sponsorship strategy? Everything needs to be interlinked into one, and they need to build this whole ecosystem, which I think is something that Red Bull is so good at. So the merging of Red Bull and Premier Padel is it's only 2 years in now. It's the early stages of a long strategic partnership.
Oh, they'll be looking at a 5 to 10 year. Yeah,
exactly. Which is why I say it's a good start, because, you can't just turn up and expect it to change like that. It's a long process. Red Bull have been in the game long enough to know this, and they're being intelligent. I've looked at the game itself. It's really interesting to see where the different courts are. So you're getting a feel of where the locations are of the players. So you're getting that storytelling element of who the players are on tour. They're speaking with you, making sure right shots, etc. So you're kind of getting that excitement and that investment in those players. So you're like, hey, okay, I'm involved in this game now. I like this player. When's their next, tournament? So it's a good kind of drip feed into the next thing, which is getting more people from playing the game or playing on the paddle courts of wherever you are. That's if you can get a booking, into the kind of Premier Padel ecosystem at an event, buying tickets, buying merchandise, understanding their players and being with them on their journey as they grow.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good. Right then, next story. So Kings League.
Yes.
Every traditional sports league is desperate to reach fans under 35. We hear this all the time. Mm-hmm. Kings League already has them. And it's interesting what they've given up to get there. So Kings League, as most people will probably know, were founded by Gerard Piqué, ex-Barcelona, and it's a creator-led, seven-a-side football league. There are lots of legendary players that play in it, but also lots of creators too. But it derives less than 5% of its income from media rights. So ultimately, they've decided not to go after that versus 50 to 80% that you would find for traditional football leagues. 85% of Kings League audience is under 35, and they've built that on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok from day one. They're the world's leading creator-led sports brand. They're running 7 major markets now, plus they've got 2 World Cup tournaments. I think they were in Paris recently for their World Finals. And they've been profitable since day one, as per what Piqué said. Be interesting to sort of, if we get into those numbers, to understand actually what that means. So DAZN have acquired global broadcast rights for the 2026 competition, and they've distributed it free except in France. So what can people learn about the way that Gerard Piqué and Kings League have gone compared to what we find from traditional sports leagues?
I think one of the big points that we need to look at is it's effectively piracy-free, because they're going where the fans are on social platforms, on your streaming platforms, and they're finding fans where they are. We always say, go where the fish are, fish where the fish are, should I say.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. We've only got to look at the Champions League the other week, where, as per The Guardian, in the UK alone, there were over 16 million illegal stream views, because that was behind a paywall. And that is a fundamental issue for the traditional media rights model, and also the advertising sitting alongside that. So this is where I think Kings League have been really clever, because it's a new sports property. You can't expect people to come to your sport just because you're new and it's exciting, especially if it's behind a paywall. So, they've gone to where their fans are. They've gone to lots of creator channels, streamers, on social first. And now, I think most of their revenue comes from sponsorship deals. I think their chief exec said it was something like 65 to 70% comes from sponsorship deals with the likes of Adidas. So they're getting those bumper deals. And I think that's really exciting at the beginning, but where more conversations will come is after like further iterations is, okay, you do not have the traditional media rights model where you are generating like large sums in broadcast fees, media rights fees. So how long does that sponsorship model sustain itself? Because are you understanding your fan? Like you've got all these amazing audiences, all these numbers, PK's spoken about like sometimes Kings League gets more audience than La Liga on some matches, but it's like longer term. Who are those fans? Do you know those fans? And how can you retarget them? So when you are selling to brands, they understand who they are because you've got the fan engagement data behind it. And, we know from our own research at Dizplai, company plug here, but, more and more brands, a significant high percentage of brands are demanding fan engagement data to back up their spend with a rights holder.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I actually picked out a quote when I was reading through some of the research that we found, that he'd said that this generation, they are not consuming the image of a brand. They want interaction and involvement. And I found that myself, that the history of what's come before, the generation doesn't really worry about that. It's not a selling point to them, but that ability to be able to interact with the content that they are consuming, whether that be in person or digitally, to have their voice heard. And that's not necessarily individuals, right? Because if thousands and thousands of people do it, you can't bring everyone's views into it, but you can start to aggregate together and use that opinion and that involvement to drive the narrative. And look, Kings League have done that from the start, where they've let the audience actively decide the direction that the game's going. You would imagine and you would hope that if people are interacting that way, they have got processes in place where they're ultimately able to identify who their fans are, rather than doing all of this on platforms they don't own and effectively renting that reach or that engagement.
For sure, and it's something the chief exec has spoken about, like wanting to get more into betting. How does the data back that up as well? Because it's all of these different alternative revenue streams. Because, the model is great right now, but they are a very, very clever bunch there. They know longer term that this model might last for X amount of time, but how do you keep on iterating? And the best sports properties now are the ones that are constantly iterating, because you have to move with the times. We're in a issue right now where it's like the media rights model, the traditional one, is broken. Everybody's speaking about it. So if you are new there, you've got to think intelligently. You've got to think outside the box. You've got to think, right, it might work this year, but it might not work in the next couple of years. So it's like constant thinking of change, which is really, really clever play. And I'm really excited to see what comes this year.
Cool, me too. Right, next.
If you're a creator who wants to build a career like the Sidemen or Emma Chamberlain, here's one to watch. You've built the audience, you've got the revenue. How do you take to the next level? Right now, everything you built depends on you showing up. To break out, you've got to look beyond the next upload. The creators building real businesses aren't just making better content. They're building assets that work without them. We've mapped out 4 phases which will turn you from a creator to a media empire. Read the guide, start building beyond the upload.
Story. So HMA and Prize Pick. So interesting, the biggest brand deal in independent sports media this year didn't go to an ESPN or Fox or Sky. It went to a 200 YouTube show collective that most people have probably never heard of. So HMA are the commercial engine behind the largest sports network on YouTube right now. And they announced on the 1st of June, they've done a landmark partnership with Prize Picks, which is a US sports entertainment operator, making Prize Picks their presenting partner across HMA's full network of, like I said, 200 plus local and regional shows. So they're describing it as the largest partnership in their history and one of the most significant brand investments that they've seen in independent sports media. They've already got 15 shows already live, with 10 more launches about to come. And they're effectively doing hyper-local distribution at a national scale, using this partnership with Prize Picks across the look and feel of all of these different shows and integrating it into the video experience that they're creating. So it's something that I know we've talked about a lot internally, haven't we, in terms of like where we feel like, I guess, creator distribution is going and how brands should be thinking about leaning into these types of experiences, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's it's really brilliant to see, and I think we look at the likes of Mark Goldbridge earlier this year, where the Overlap, acquired 2 of his YouTube channels, and from, that global acquired a stake in the Overlap itself. And it's like these creators have worked really, really, really hard to get a seat at the table. Let's not forget about that. The likes of Mark have been working for 10 years solid.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Going live every single day to build his audience, to understand his audience. You know, people scoffed at him. Even Gary Neville, like, called them those bloody YouTubers, you know, but they were insistent. They stuck with the plan, and they are now reaping the rewards, and good for them. So I think this is, you know, really exciting to see, because as I touched upon in the last point, you know, traditional broadcast is changing. You know, where sponsors are getting involved, they're getting involved with creators much more than your traditional networks. And that's because creators speak with their audiences, not at their audiences. They understand who they are. And I think you're going to see more and more of this. Like, the conversations that I'm having is far more like creator based. How can we get creators involved in the conversation? You know, we want them to spread the message of what we are talking about, and like the value exchange there. And like, those conversations were very hard to have, you know, a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And now people are waking up to be like, this is a huge opportunity. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. And this is just a signal of the times. And this is just one of many that will happen in the coming year, especially with the World Cup, and like what happens after that as well.
Absolutely. Look, and I think it's I always find with these special interests, and they often get called niche channels, right? But the reality is like, they're not, you know, they are bigger than most local media outlets in many ways. And I think what they are, I think there was always this worry from brands before about, oh, but is it brand safe? It's kind of like, yeah, but if you want authenticity and you want real cut through to an audience that actually cares about the content that you are associated with, you're going to have to accept as well that opinion and real opinion is central to that, and the audience feel like they can have an opinion too. Because if you want it to be brand safe, no one's tuning in.
Also, like, you do not want to hold the creator hostage. Like, they want to be their authentic self. You're going to get the best content and the best engagement with their audience if they are authentic. They will sniff out immediately the audience if it's, you know, an agenda, it's fake, or it's kind of PR blurb that has been written for the sake of, you know, said partnership. Be authentic, show up, speak to the audience that you have built and you know so well, and, you know, and let that brand, you know, weave its way into it, and that's when it will work. But it has to be, you know, it has to be relatable. You know, you don't, it's interesting to see some creator partnerships where you're like, oh, that hasn't quite worked out. And there's a reason for that. It's because the brand doesn't speak to the audience of that creator. And it's kind of putting, you know, a square peg in a round hole. You've got to make sure it works. And that's like the duty of like the creator partnerships manager and, you know, those working on the brand side, but also like the creator itself to know when to say no. And it's very hard when, you know, money is coming your way for brand deals, but it's also to be like, I know my audience and this won't sit with them, because ultimately, like, think of the longer term game rather than the shorter term one.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think this takes on to the next story as well, because obviously what we're talking about there is how they're doing that sort of hyper local targeting, and TikTok are now rolling out a local feed in the US. So I'm sure we'll start to see it elsewhere too, where they are surfacing content from creators that are nearby to you, community-based accounts, and they're giving users geographically specific discovery layers within the app. So ultimately, this is them finding creating local areas that are then starting to become competitors to local media, to newspapers, to local TV. And I always remember years ago as well about, you know, community journalists, as the phrase was used, and you would have heard that a number of times in your time back at Sky, right? And it's never really cut through.
I started off my journalism life writing for a local paper.
There we go.
Being at the local marathon in Ealing, interviewing runners, you know, being one of them, or being on the street on Friday asking about building projects. What do you think? You know, that's the hyper local kind of journalism there. But what we're seeing now is, unfortunately, like, local journalism is under, you know, extreme threat. It's closing at a rapid rate, which is really, really sad to see.
Yeah, it is.
And, you know, I wish it wasn't happening. I really wish there was a way for me to personally stop that. But, you know, I just don't have the power, sadly, to do that. But I think this is a really interesting move from TikTok. And I think it's a clever move, because it's replacing where you would normally go to your paper to see what's like happening around. But it's actually meeting people where they are right now, which is on your phone a lot of the time. If I'm new to an area, let's say I'm going to the US this summer for the World Cup, I have no idea what's happening in the area. Let me go onto TikTok. Let me see what the best restaurants are. Let me see, you know, what's happening in the area. it's a great like discoverability tool.
It totally is. Here in Manchester, we've got something called Manchester Confidential, which ultimately started out as this socially driven recommender of great places to go. And as it's grown and grown and grown now, Matty, who basically fronts it, goes along to restaurants and venues and samples their experience. These local venues are paying Matty to come in and do it, but give what always feels like an authentic view of whether you should go to that venue. And I know clearly he always says that you should go to that venue. TikTok are doing the exact same thing. They're thinking, if we can really tap into local creators who really resonate with the local audience, then we can tap into local brands. And that's cash that we can pull away from traditional local media outlets into our environment. And that's more money that we can generate. It comes down to advertising cash at the end of the day.
Yeah, it comes down to advertising cash. But I also think, at the same time, like, not just advertising, it's great for local communities because if we look at the hospitality industry, using the UK as an example, it's under severe threat right now with the tax rates that are put on businesses. And we are seeing, independent hospitality closing at a horrifying rate. My favorite local restaurant gone under. I was reading another one has gone under. And, the guys at Top Jaw, I don't know if you follow on Instagram, but they are brilliant with their London recommendations, and not just London of where to eat. But they, did something a couple of days ago, which was help out local hospitality. Yeah. It's in big trouble. So people want discoverability. And if they know that there are places to go where you can visit and it's being like rated by locals, it's in your area, the traditional kind of search on Google might be replaced by, something like TikTok. People are going to use it. And I can only think this is a good thing for like local businesses, and local communities. I mean, there is the issue of, it's got to be compliant. You can toggle on and off because a lot of people are like, I don't want you to know my location if I'm an individual user.
Yeah.
It's that. But I
think part of it could be that because most people do toggle it off. And now, in theory, if they get this right, people start toggling it on and it's just more information that they haven't got to use. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a really clever data play. Like for me, I'm a toggle off. People are like, find my friends. I'm like, you ain't finding me. Kind of thing. I'm like, no, mysterious girl. But I was just thinking, play Peter Andre. No, don't do that.
I mean, yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, right now, I could turn on my phone and be like, I want a good restaurant in London in this location. I'm going to toggle it on. Instead of me like searching through like aimless pages of like restaurants, I could find it on TikTok. So I can only like congratulate the team on, thinking local. And I think it's a great opportunity for local businesses, local advertisement, and even like, let's put it back into a sport lens. If you're a local football team, if you're a non-league football team playing, let's say I'll use Ealing where I'm from originally as the example. But if you're a local football club like Hanwell Town in that area, all of a sudden you can toggle on much more like advertising potential, because if you're doing hyper-localized campaigns through it, it's like the opportunity there is potentially vast.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Right, cool. Final stories. The biggest events of the year are gold mines for publishers, and Dizplai's new research shows you exactly how to cash in. We analysed over 30,000 comments across the US election, the World Cup, the Met Gala and more, uncovering 8 ways audiences engage so you can package, price and sell your content and own the conversation, whether you have broadcast rights or not. Head to Dizplai.com Insights to download Harness the Hype today. So Unilever, obviously one of the biggest brands in the world, they've got 35 brands under them. So I talked about this on LinkedIn a while ago, and we've talked about Unilever before, but they're the biggest FMCG company, and they've moved half of their marketing budget to creator marketing. World Cup starts in a couple of days as we're recording this. So we're about to find out if their strategy has worked. So they've launched their biggest sports parts of activation in their history, they said, for the World Cup. Fernando Fernandez publicly committed in 2025 to moving 50% of their marketing investment, and they've done that now. They're creating things like the House of Fresh, which is like a fan experience in host cities, Mexico City, New York, Miami. They've got the Locker Room, which is a 24/7 real-time social content hub on YouTube and TikTok. And they are looking to respond to those live World Cup moments through the different creators. So in a lot of ways, and I've talked about this with Joe Redfern and Lee on the pod before, stuff that the NBA's been doing, stuff that the NFL's been doing. Unilever, I think, have been involved. They've done stuff around the Olympics as well, from memory.
Mm-hmm.
They're now bringing this into this for their biggest activation ever. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see how they get the balance right between commerciality and great content, but also if that investment pays off for them.
I mean, that's a significant amount of investment, to be basically, to be moving half of your budget over to a large-scale campaign is, it's high risk, high reward, essentially, with this. What I'm interested from this, it's like, during the event, fantastic, but what happens after?
Yeah.
What levers are they pulling? What levers are they pulling during? God, couldn't help myself there. What levers are they pulling during the tournament to ensure that people are getting into the Unilever ecosystem after? It's the classic case of this is a high spike moment, high interest moment, but the moment the event ends, what happens? Like, what is the plan, the content strategy plan for after that? Of course, it's going to be at the highest level, but you don't want it to drop off a cliff. You want to keep it it's going to drop, but you want it to keep it like a steady ground, not completely off. And it's like, okay, so what plan? I'm really excited to see the plan they have after more than actually what they've got in place for it now, because I think that is where the real value lies. It's the longer term strategy after that. A men's World Cup happens once every 4 years. I really hope they put the same, a similar level of investment into the Women's World Cup when it comes along. There will be different elements of storytelling within that, because you've got to think of them as two separate tournaments, two separate things. But what they will do with that is key. I don't know as of yet what, and I think that's my nervous excitement for it.
And what success looks like for them as well. Generally speaking, these kind of brands are doing a brand play, so it's about ultimately keep the brand top of mind rather than a direct conversion play. And like you said, obviously they're doing this throughout, and this House of Fresh and this locker room, look, they could take that to other sports, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be football specific, and they could roll that out afterwards and keep that going. But like I said, what is the plan? And then I think the other thing as well is kind of obviously they're doing this across social and video channels as well, where they don't own any of the audience. Are they trying to own any, or are they just happy just to play the brand play?
I think where it gets interesting, it's this is going to be a really, really, really saturated brand World Cup.
Yeah.
It's in the US. There's brands galore. I mean, we look at it for the World Cup, we look at it for LA 28. It's the most commercial World Cup Olympics that are happening. It's brand overload. So what brands are going to cut through the noise? There's a lot there, and there's going to be a lot of brands piggybacking off it as well, who don't have any affiliation to the World Cup itself. So how can you stand out within that? I think having a 24/7 content strategy is amazing for the tournament, because it's that always on. But is it just always on for the tournament itself, or is that always on then translating after the tournament? Because that is where the biggest results will happen. It's great, you have this uplift for a month, but then after, do you still have that brand recognition? Are people coming to your brand during that time? You've now got a four-year plan until the next World Cup, if they're associating it with the next Men's World Cup, I'd like to add. Within the next one. So what are their plans? Or are they using this as a big exploration into the sports sphere and have a sports content calendar where they will put some of the rest of their budget? I mean, there's now only 50% of the budget within that to target.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean they're using all of it on this, but you're absolutely right. It's how do they transition through this? And I'm sure there's a lot they're going to learn from. And they've been building up to this for a few years now, but you're absolutely right. There are other opportunities that come around. Obviously, they've picked football because they're the biggest sport in the world, right? And they've got a huge opportunity and a huge moment in that. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and I'm really I'm excited to see it, but I'm more excited to see what happens after more than anything else.
Right, we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe we'll have a look in a few months' time as well and do another one. Get you on again, Ellie.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining today. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm sure we'll get you on again soon. So thank you for everyone for joining this week's episode of The Attention Shift. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you want to feature as a guest in the future, send us an email. You can email us at hello@attentionshift.media or hit me up on LinkedIn or even WhatsApp if you've got my number, which people often do as well. I had a few this weekend. Thank you so much for your time. I've been Ed Abis. This has been Ellie Walter, and we've been The Attention Shift. If you enjoyed this conversation, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this. And make sure you smash that bell icon too, so you're always the first to know exactly when a new episode drops.